All right, peoples, here we are. The Pastor Andy podcast. I haven't been on it for a little bit. It's been a couple of weeks and I have missed my podcast group. Everyone that's watching, everyone that's listening to this awesome podcast moment. I'm just checking the mic. My mic sounds nice. Check one. For everyone that's listening, welcome back to my PA podcast. Today is a special moment because I am sitting here with my child, the fruit of my loins. Okay? Kayla T. Kayla Yvonne Thompson. Is that your name? Yeah, that's a whole government name. Sitting here with me on my podcast. And we are just going to have a nice, quick little conversation just about fathers and daughters, daddy, daughter, you know, and just kind of the power of it, and just kind of that whole deal, you know, and I just felt like it would be really cool for us to have a conversation about it, and because I think, you know, the relationship between fathers and daughters is a big thing, you know, it's interesting. I think the opposite sex parent relationship is interesting, and, you know, I mean, just this past Sunday, I kind of was talking about, you know, you from the pulpit and how great you were, and you know, then I talked about your brothers, and they felt a little salty about that, you know, and then you know, I was on the ride in today. I was on the phone with my own father for an hour, you know, and so it's like I'm at this point now where it's like I'm old enough to have an adult child, and then my parents are getting older, and so I'm like in the middle. It's not like, you know, my dad's parents are all gone, so it's like I'm in this middle place, you know, where you know, my dad's above me and I'm having a conversation with him, and then I've got you, and then the boys are 17, you know, and just kind of that relationship and being able to make that transition, and from kind of, you know, you as a little kid to now you as an adult, you know, and of course, you know, fatherhood's kind of a lost thing, you know, so, you know, I felt like, you know, we should talk about that.
I think that's interesting that you mentioned transitioning from like being, you know, you being my dad when I'm like a little kid, but then going into like I'm 22 years old and I'm not, I mean, I guess I'm a quote unquote adult, but I still don't really feel like an adult really. I still live with you and don't really have like a legit job yet or anything like that. Not making any money on my own, but I was telling one of the girls that I mentor just how I've really realized that you and mom do a really good job with parenting in that in-between stage of like, you know, going from a teenager into like a young adult. Just because, you know, I think sometimes parents don't know how to like find that middle ground of like, I'm still your parent and I'm like, you know, I'm raising you and I'm teaching you and maybe even still like reprimanding you or whatever, but I'm also realizing that you have your own opinions and you have your own thoughts and things like that. So it's like, I felt at like, you know, 18, 17, that you respected me and stuff like that. Like, I remember something specific that happened. You and mom, you know, you guys, you know, your bedroom is like your own private space, but you also allow us to kind of come in and out all the time. And we're always hanging out, like all of us, me, the boys, and, you know, when Alex comes over and everything, and we're always all in there. But sometimes when the doors close, like, you know, we gotta knock. And so one time, I think I was like 17, maybe I was a little older, 17, 18, 19, one of those three. And the door was closed, and I was knocking on the door. I don't know why, I kept knocking. You weren't responding. And I was like, well, you know, they'll answer at some point. And you weren't responding. And I knocked again, and you didn't answer. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, why are they not opening the door? And I should have thought something was probably happening, that I didn't want to go in there. I don't know why I kept trying. But at one point you were just like, go away. And I was like, oh, shoot. Okay, oh, crap. Oh, my God, I feel so bad. And I just went upstairs to my room, and I was like, sorry. Like, I think I, like, said, like, sorry, it's Kayla. And I went upstairs. And I didn't really think anything of it. If anything, I just felt bad that I was like kind of imposing on your privacy. But maybe like 20, 30 minutes later, you came up to my room or something like that. I think I remember you coming up to my room and being like, hey, I just want to apologize for like yelling at you. It's like snapping at you like that. I didn't know it was you. Like, I didn't mean to, you know, be disrespectful like that. And I was like, oh my God, I was so taken aback. Like, I didn't even take any disrespect from it. But the fact that you like apologized to me and you're like my dad, I don't know, it was like kind of like, oh shoot, like my dad really respects me. And I felt super like, you know, I felt respected in that moment. I thought that was just something that made me realize like, you know, they do a really good job of kind of fostering that, like, I know you're your own person. And I think that's what makes our relationship so great now is that, you know, I'm a kid, but I feel like you respect me as an adult too.
Sure. I mean, I think the challenge is, you know, to kind of go from, because, you know, you'll experience this with your own kids, you know, but I think, you know, your relationship with your children kind of starts really as, you know, there's two types of power, you know, there's authority and there's influence, and they're both powerful. And I think, you know, when your kids are little, when they're young, your main power with them is authority. You do what I say because I told you to do it, and just do it because I said do it. Go brush your teeth because I said so.
Right.
You know, right now Alexandra is trying to establish authority with Lydia. That's the main power. It's authority. And authority is powerful, and but influence is powerful too. And I think that as your kids get older, you know, you have to learn how to transition from this authority position more into an influential position. And that's why people end up losing relationship with their kids, or why some people don't really spend a whole lot of time with their parents, because it's difficult for their parents to get away from the authority place.
Right.
You know, and I think to transition into that place of, well, let me give you some things to think about,
Right.
and give you some things to consider, you know, so that we can maintain our relationship.
Right.
You know, because I want to be able to be someone in your life. You know, I also think though that a part of it is that I think that if you're a healthy adult, you want your kids to grow up. You don't want your kids to be babies forever. You know, you want to believe that they can make good decisions, and that you don't have to tell them every little thing to do, you know. And I know for me, even right now with, you know, with the boys, you know, there's just a certain amount of there's almost like an assumption that I just want to make with them, like they'll figure it out, like they're gonna get it. Like I don't want to feel like I have to make every single solitary decision for you. That doesn't just make me mad from being upset with them. It makes me mad from a perspective of it shouldn't be this way. You're 17.
Right.
I shouldn't have to tell you everything to do. Like you're 6. You know what I'm saying? And and it's not just because they make bad decisions, but it's also just because it shouldn't be this way. I just feel like, no, you're almost 18 years old, and I need to be able to trust you, you know, to make good decisions.
Right.
But, you know, I think sometimes, you know, I think you can delay your kids' development if you treat them like babies for too long, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that that's another part of it too, that, you know, you know, at least we tried, you know, and we don't, you know, we do it. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't do it. There have been times, you know, with Alexandra, you know, there have been times with her where she kind of felt like, you know, you just, like I crossed the line of telling her a little bit more than trying to influence her, guiding her. So it's kind of like, it just was a refresher for me of, okay, I need to be conscious of this, you know, because I think one time I said to Alex, like, no, this is what you're going to do. And she just kind of was like, I am grown, I do have a job, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that, you know, there's always that fine line, you know.
I think, like, for teenagers, though, like when you mentioned about, you know, walking that fine line and giving respect, like, one of the things that I was just talking to just someone that I was, like, just giving advice to, like, a teenager recently was, you know, they're in this place where their parent is, like, it's that same thing of, like, they're like, 17, and their parents are kind of, like, treating them like they're a kid, and they're kind of, like, in there, talking to me like, well, I'm like, I feel like I have these opinions and I have these thoughts, and they're just like they don't care about what I think. They're treating me like I'm a child. And my response to them was, well, I realized that, I got respect because I was respectable. And I think that you first have to show that, because with the boys, I think what's going on with my brothers is that they're not really showing that they can do that. Like, because you're like, I shouldn't have to tell you everything to do. Yeah, like, that's on them. Like, they have to first show that they're able to make good decisions. They have to show that, they're maturing in their thoughts and stuff like that, and their decisions and their actions. And that, me and AJ had a conversation yesterday about like, yeah, like, I'm not going to respect you unless you show like respect to me. Like, that's just how it works. Like,
Sure.
You have to first show that you're respectable for me to respect. Like, I'm like, I want us to have this, relationship where we can have that mutual respect, because you're almost 18, but it's kind of like you first have to show that, because right now you're really not. So I think it's like a balance of the teenager and the child and the parent.
Yeah, and I think that cuts both ways, because I think that the other thing that happens when your kids get older is that, when they're small, when they're young, you're like the first gods they worship in a way. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just the kids just think your kids just think you're everything. Like, everything's amazing about you. And like, everything about you is right. It's kind of how your kids see you.
That's the jam.
And then as your kids get older and they go through puberty and now they're becoming these little miniature adults, mm-hmm. It's almost like they kind of start to see your flaws now a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that in that moment, it's also important for a parent to also think about being respected, not just because you have to respect me, but respect me because I'm respectable. Right. So it cuts both ways. It's like you have a teenager that's kind of saying, well, I'm 17 and I have some of my own thoughts. The parent is going to be like, okay, then make a good decision and mm-hmm. I'll respect you. Mm-hmm. I think in the exact same way, that comes back at the parent.
True.
It's like, it's very difficult for me to tell you, get your attitude together and my attitude's messed up.
Right.
Or,
right.
I think one of the things that's charming, you mentioned AJ, mm-hmm. one of the things about AJ is AJ reminds me of me a mm-hmm. lot. Mm-hmm. Not just me when I was young, but me even now, mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I think that it's tough to tell somebody to do something you don't do.
Right.
And I think a thing that happens with teenagers is another thing that happens with people and their parents, is that their parents want to be respected around an area that they're not respectable. Right. It's hard to respect you around that thing and you're not good. You're fussing at me about where's my money and you don't have any money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I think that idea of of being aware of, okay, can I be respected? And I think mm-hmm. that a lot of times a parent is at a point where they're like, whatever, I pay for your stuff, or you mm-hmm. just do what I say because I said so. Mm-hmm. Totally separated from whether or not they actually have any real wisdom in that area. So it's kind of interesting how it does come full circle.
Yeah, that's true.
When it comes to really being, really being respected. What do you, Kayla, when you think about, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with me, your relationship with your mother, and what are some of the things from your perspective mm-hmm. that are challenging, about a relationship with us? I mean, are there things that you think, well, this is a good part of it, but this is a challenge of it? Because I think sometimes people look at us and just think, oh, well, we're these perfect parents or whatever, and I know we're not. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there's got to be something in your head that you're kind of like, well, like that's not necessarily the best thing,
Well, yeah. I mean, the first thing that I'm thinking of is how great you guys really are, because I think the more that I'm like, just with my friendships and with just the kids and the youth that I'm like talking to and have a relationship with, I'm realizing that there are a lot of like not great parents out there.
Sure.
And there's no perfect parent, like you said. Like you guys, you know, you're great, but you're not perfect. But there's a lot of like, I'm super grateful, and I'm super lucky and blessed and thankful to have the parents that I have, because there's just not, you know, and that can go down the list of things
Sure.
that I've observed or whatever. But I think maybe the thing that makes it challenging maybe is just, I think being a pastor's kid is not the easiest thing. Depending on depending on your personality or just who you are as a person. But I think what makes it hard, or could make it hard, is you guys, your job is like 24/7.
Sure.
And especially with like mom right now, like she's super busy, like with running the church. And I think for me at this place in my life, it's like watching you guys from a place of like, I kind of understand more than I did when I was a kid, I think. So what I'm trying to say is like, I understand that you guys are holding a lot on your shoulders, and it's like hard to watch when people like, you know, just there's betrayal that happens, you know, for pastors, but you're not just like my pastor, you're my dad. So it's like watching you and mom like get hurt by people, or people just leave, but you guys are working so hard to try to like, you know, really bring Jesus, and I think watching you guys in this profession is difficult, and then like sharing you guys, sometimes you could come from the angle of like, oh, I have to share you with like the church or with like your spiritual kids, but I don't know, like I think for me with that, like I love people, especially with the spiritual kids, like that's just like the more the merrier. Like I love, like, you know, Pastor Manny and Tia and Cedric, Josh, Johnny, like Deb, all of them, like Jess, I love them. So watching you guys love them the way that you love your like biological kids and like your adopted child Alex, it's like, I don't know, it's almost like it's like showing me like the way God loves us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
it's
you know?
I mean, I think we definitely are trying to, you know. I think we're
Yeah.
trying to love everybody, you know, at the same place. I think that one of the things about love is that there's not just one kind of love, you know. And I think we can really get messed up in the world where it's kind of like we only are kind of looking at agape love, you know. Like I recently kind of wrote, you know, I was not responding, but I had a counseling session with a couple, and then I was I wrote an email to one of them in which I was saying, I want you to be careful that you don't mix up agape love and family love or romantic love, because they're not the same. I can have agape godly love for you, but that may not be enough for me to want to be married to you. And I think the same is true when it comes to kingdom. It's easy to kind of have agape love, but the love you have for your children is different. It's like a family love. It's like it's a much closer love. And I think that people come closer and closer to you in that as a pastor. I think that, you know, for me right now, it's almost like, and then this may sound, I don't know, horrible, but there's almost kind of like a veil that you have as a pastor between you and the people. And I don't know if it's really a veil, but it's kind of like you love them seriously, but you have to be careful not to love them more than you love the Lord or more than you love the Word, because you can just almost start to worship people almost more than you worship God. And if you're that way, then it can be difficult for you even to tell people truth that they need to hear.
Like the approval of
That's
like
right.
making sure. Yeah,
That's right. You want their approval so much that the Lord is telling you to tell them something, and you don't. Or like even Moses kind of got into trouble because he got so angry with the people and it made him disobedient with God. So it's like you have to be careful that your relationship with them isn't so personal that it messes you up.
Yeah.
I think at the same time, you know, you do love people deeply. You care for people deeply, you know, and and I think the most challenging thing for me is when people push past that veil, you know, where they move from kind of being just like a person that's in my church and I'm their pastor and I care about them. Then they get closer, you know. It's like, and they all of a sudden they're in my home. And at that moment, I have a higher expectation for them, you know.
Exactly.
My expectation for them is higher now.
Right.
You know, and it would almost have been better for them to just be a good, solid, faithful member of the church, pay their tithes, volunteer, just be good, than to push past that with me. You know, it's like my expectation of them is higher. And if I think those are the people, because there are some pastors who just get mad if anybody leaves the church. For me, it's not that. It's more the people who did the work to push past just me as Pastor Andy to now a closer relationship, and then they want to like disappear without any explanation or any conversation. To me, that's much more challenging.
And that's what's hard for me to watch. Too, because like seeing people come into our home, and then like, then just leave, like what you said, just leave, and then watching you and Mom kind of like, I don't know, it's not something that we have this huge discussion about or anything that we're like, you know, hey, like, so this is what happened or whatever. And I mean, not that we don't talk about it at all, but I think what's weird is like trying not to be like salty or hold that person like for just, you know, up and leaving. And it's kind of like, hey, but I thought we were closer than that. And it's definitely it's interesting the way this conversation is kind of going, because it's kind of started from like a father-daughter thing to now it's kind of talking about kind of a PK thing, which I think is a good thing to talk about, you know. And for, you know, anyone that's looking at this or sharing this or whatever, I mean, because PKs definitely can struggle with Christianity. PKs can definitely struggle with Jesus. There are PKs who definitely can end up not all that interested in God. And a lot of that is that they do personalize the hurts that they see their parents go through, or, you know, there are things that they see, and even not even that. I think sometimes, you know, pastors, it's like they're I don't know if they're conscious of it, but they have to be careful not to just, you know, be too upfront with the kids about frustrations that they had with people in the church. Which you guys do a good job of.
We try as best we can, because it can be very easy, you know, for a kid to personalize, and the next thing you know, they're mad at the trustee board, or they're mad at the people at the church, you know, and it's kind of difficult to want to go there. And then also, you know, we try really hard not to talk at all about people's personal business, or you know, we've always been super strict about that, not just for their protection but also for you guys' protection, so that you don't have to then, you know, come to church, you know, and look at Morgan, you know, and know all of Morgan's crazy problems, you know, because Morgan's got deep-rooted difficulties. And so it's like, imagine, it would be impossible for you to work for Morgan if you knew about Morgan what I know about Morgan. No, okay. but I'm just saying that it's like, I think that, you know, it's like we pastors have to be conscious of that. You know?
And I think, though, what happens with that is, if that did happen, if I knew way too much about, like, kind of just the people on staff, or, like, just people like deacons or whatever, like, it would cause me to not be able to focus on, like, because what I was gonna say when you first, you know, mentioned this PK thing is, you guys really made it easy to like come to church and it be about like Jesus, and not be about like, this is like y'all's job, and this is like I'm at the office with my parents or something like that, like, because I think for me, like, what's made me as a PK different than what I think a lot of people think about PKs, which is just like, oh, you're wild, like, you're gonna be wild in college, huh? Like, no, because I actually genuinely have my own relationship with God, like, and I think that made it easy when I came to church and wasn't distracted by, like, thinking about, oh, like, I see, you know, somebody leading worship, and I'm like, yeah, I know stuff about you, and you ain't all, you know what I'm saying? So
Right. Right.
But I think that's kind of where like PK's, and maybe it's not all, I don't think it's all PK's fault. I think it's maybe the parent, going back to the parenting thing, like I find that, a lot of PKs just don't have their own relationship with Jesus. They don't really, it's like they're so numb to it because they've just known it their whole life that like they don't really know who Jesus is for themselves. Like they've never really had like an encounter, like, and a personal thing. It's just kind of like, yeah, God, like, that guy, he's cool. Like, I know him, kind of.
Yeah.
And he exists. But, like, for me right now, it's like when I really knew God for myself, that's when I was like, yo, like, I want to share this for myself. Like, I want to, like, have my own, like, drive to, like, find out what my purpose is for God. Because now I realize what you had when you wanted to be a pastor and wanted to start this church. So, I don't know, like, I think that that's kind of the issue maybe with PKs is the parents, I don't know, just didn't foster that well.
I mean, I think sometimes a part of the challenge is that, like PKs, I mean, I'm a PK, my whole life was in the ministry. I think sometimes people in the church can treat PKs like they're a part of the church and not necessarily like they're a person themselves. It's almost kind of like the way that musicians can be used sometimes. It's almost like people, they just want the musicians to play and be there on time. And people don't really care if they're saved. They just care about them playing. Right. And just do your role. Just get up there and play the drums. And even we don't care how bad your week was. Play the drums because we need that for church to work. I think people can treat PKs that way sometimes. It's kind of like, we just need you to be the good pastor's daughter. That's what we need you to be. We don't care about you. We don't care about your life.
Right.
We just need you to play this role in the church as the pastor's daughter.
Right.
And I think that is also a factor in people. I know for myself, during the times when I was struggling with Christianity or salvation, it had to do with the fact that I felt like people were coming to church and were upset about how I treated them. And I'm like, I'm 14 years old, so get over yourself. I thought you were here for church.
Right.
Why do you care if I spoke to you or not? Now I'm having a conversation. Now my dad's taking me aside and saying, so I guess you were rude to Mother Sullivan. And I'm like, I don't even know who Mother Sullivan is. This is your church. They're supposed to be here for God. What does that have to do with me? I'm 14.
Right.
First of all, you're their pastor. I'm not. Number two, they supposed to keep their eyes on Jesus. I thought it was supposed to be about him. So I think that all of those things fall into play. I think another thing with us, and there's a part of me that's just like, well, Lord, I thank you, is that some of the things that we have believed God for, things, dreams, or visions that we had, you guys actually got a chance to see those things come to pass. I think there's a lot of kids whose parents, are like, Jesus is going to do this thing, and then they're in a living room or they're in a room with 25 people and they're still in a room with 25 people and the kids never saw Jesus do anything. And so I think that that's another part of it too, that for me, makes me say, okay, wow, Lord, you really moved on our behalf, so that our children will be able to respect you and respect what you did in our lives,
That's very
and
true.
because I think that's a big part of it. I think that's a fact, and I think
fair.
Also kind of practicing what you preach and preaching what you practice.
Because that probably definitely is a factor.
Unfortunately, the kids get a chance to see a side of the pastor that's that's not the guy they see on stage.
Right.
And I mean, you get to see a side of me that people don't see on stage.
Yeah.
But it doesn't cause you to lose all of your faith in God.
So this kind of brings my mind back to like your first question, which was what makes it hard. Or this is not really what makes it hard, but it's just kind of like something that I had to understand is, your job is talking.
Sure.
Like, your job is communicating. And so I had to kind of realize that Sundays, when you come back home and you go in your room, you have like a thing. You go in your room, you're on your iPad, you're playing your bubble games or whatever.
Right.
And you're watching sports, and it's just dark in there, it's quiet, you got your blanket, like, you're chilling, and I'm coming in there like, hey, so, trying to talk, and you're like, yep, like, kind of not really saying anything, and I'm like, why are you not talking to me? Like, he's not responding to me, and I'm like, trying not to get, like, personally, like, offended, like, you're not talking to me, and I'm just like, hey, actually, he's probably just really tired, you know?
Yeah.
And he's, right, he's probably tired from talking for like 7 hours today,
Right.
in front of like people, and so kind of like understanding that, like, you know, this is kind of like.
See, I think that's another thing.
That.
That's another thing, Kayla, that people that can affect the PK relationship, is that people, their kids who see their parents give to the church at a level that they don't give to them. So it's like it's like, oh, so you have all this patience for this person,
yeah,
but you don't have patience for me.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was trying to marry your mother, you know,
Right.
it was like, I basically was like, no, I'm going to marry LaShawn. She's the person for me. And I remember the way that my dad was about it. I kind of was like, dude, what are you talking about? I just saw you marry somebody just 2 weeks ago who's crazy. So it was like, it was kind of like, oh, so it's all strict for me. I'm not ready, but they are.
Right.
I'm more ready than them.
Right.
You know, so I
Yeah.
think that, you know, sometimes people
That's
will
true.
see that, you know. I
Yeah.
think that, you know, it's why we try to do things like the family vacations or that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and I was gonna
And,
say, I think you guys balance that well.
Yeah.
Like,
We try
you know,
to.
you
Yeah.
take us out. Like, let's go to, like, right now we're trying to figure out Thor's coming out tomorrow.
That's right.
Trying to figure out how to all, you know, that's kind of something we do. We all go see the Marvel movies.
That's right.
Star
Because
Wars
if
movies,
I could be a
and-
superhero, it would be Thor.
Really?
Thor would be the superhero.
I didn't know that was
I would
the
be.
decision you
If
made.
I
I know we
could
talked
be a
about that
superhero,
before.
it would be Thor.
Okay, why?
Because first of all, Thor is pretty no joke. He's bad.
He's
okay?
pretty hot.
Okay,
Sorry.
I understand from your perspective, he's hot. I know not the hotness of
Yeah,
him
okay,
that
that
makes me like
Right,
Thor.
right, okay.
Although, if I had to be a white dude,
You would
I
be-
definitely would pick looking like Thor. That would
Yes.
certainly help me.
Yeah.
Okay, but I like the fact that he just kind of has all of these qualities. I mean, he's really strong. You know, he's virtually indestructible.
True.
Okay, I mean, so he's not quite Superman, but I mean, it's
Right.
not like you can't just shoot him. You know,
That's true.
he's not really a human. So
right.
it's like
Right. That's
he's-
true. He's not.
He's
an
not.
alien,
See,
basically.
he's an alien, basically.
I forget that sometimes.
And you know, so there's that part of him.
Right.
But then there's also like there's a power that he has beyond just his brute strength.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, he's a god. You know?
True.
And he's a god of thunder, and he's a god of lightning, and he's a god of power. And I
Right.
like that. I like the fact that he can pull power from on high.
My God.
You know, it's beyond just what he is in
It's true.
himself.
Yeah.
If he wants to, he can call down power.
Right.
And it's there. You know, I
That's
also
true.
like the fact that, you know, there's an aspect of him that's kind of his father, and he submitted, and it was like he had to qualify to
He got humbled.
He got humbled.
He got humbled like crazy in the
Yes.
first movie.
And even the hammer is something that you have to be worthy to wield it.
Yeah.
It's not just like it's his.
This is
No,
a little bit of like a sermon.
Yeah,
no?
I know, I'm just
you
saying.
could kind of maybe like no, you could use this.
For
I'm
real.
realizing how like Christian
Yeah.
Thor kind of is.
Thor is.
You're
you know,
convincing because I'm like sitting here like, okay, what superhero would I be? I don't really know. Now I'm kind of like, yeah, Thor's kind of the best.
Yeah.
I mean, Captain America is cool because Captain America in the Avengers movie, he almost, and you know, they're playing that game where they were trying to, like, who can pick up Thor's hammer? And Thor's like, none of y'all are going to pick it up. Like,
Right,
it's
right.
not, you have to be worthy. Like, you're not doing it. And Captain America kind of like,
He budged it a little bit.
he
yeah.
kind of budged it a little, which makes me think of Vision. Vision is
Sure.
pretty dope because
Sure.
Vision actually can pick it up.
Right.
But
sure.
Vision's not really like a person. But-
Yeah, I don't know if that's fair.
but I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, so we see movies and all that stuff, which is cool because you guys will. I think. I don't know. I'm not saying you're strategic about it, but I think you like understand that. Like, hey, like I need to be able to also like give to my kids too, and not just like
Sure.
to people in the church. And so you'll like take out days to be like, hey, let's go to the movies, or hey, let me like let me drive you guys here and let's talk in the car,
Sure.
like with the
Sure.
boys and stuff like that. And I think that's what is different. I think that's kind of like the difference in maybe what makes some PKs not really like Christians
And
anymore.
it's time, and it's time. And, we can't take all the credit for it, because there are a lot of pastors who they're working 2 jobs. They have a job
True.
and their church. And so it's just kind of like, it's a
true.
lot,
Yeah.
and they need their kids. And so they make them do stuff, and
Right.
that could be positive and negative,
Yeah.
and so,
But you guys never really, I mean, no, okay, you guys did make me join the worship team.
yeah,
Which,
I know this.
Which,
I'm familiar with me.
but this is the thing. You didn't make me join it because people need to see you on stage. It was more of like, you knew that I had a gift
Right.
to sing and I had an anointing, which I didn't even know about. But it was more about me not being afraid of it and
Yeah.
my fear. Like, the lesson was like, yeah, I'm not going to let you not do something just because you're afraid of it.
Right.
That's not what we're going to do. So you're going to be on the worship team. But you guys never really like forced us to serve or
Right.
or even like, I remember times where, I'm walking around the church and people don't really know that I'm your daughter because you
Sure.
never really like pulled us on stage or something, or like, you guys don't do stuff all the time, like put pictures of us up like on the screens or anything like that. So there was times when I'm trying to like go to the hospitality room and get some food, and the volunteers like, whoa, like, what are you doing? Like, you can't be back here. And I gotta like pull out the, I'm PK's, I'm Pastor Andy's daughter card, and they're like, oh my God, you're Kayla. Okay, I'm sorry. Like, go get a bagel, because they don't know. Like,
Right.
and of course that makes AJ think he can just go steal stuff. Because he's like, well, they wouldn't let me in there. I'm like, so you're going to go and sneak and steal from them? Like, I'm so confused how that balances out, but whatever. But, like, it's like people don't know, and I think there's kind of like a beauty to that. Like,
Right.
I'm kind of free to really be myself. I think as I've gotten older, joining the worship team up there, like, in leading, I think people know who I am now. But now that's, like, fostering kind of, like, just that aspect of being, I don't know, like, people coming up to me and I don't know them, but, they know me and they're like, hey, and I have to be like, hey, how you doing? Like,
Right,
and
right.
kind of just being like, pretending that I know you, which
Right.
I don't know, that sounds kind of bad, I guess,
Yeah.
but I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's
it's
a good
about
thing. I
being
think it's
kind.
cool.
It's about
Yeah,
not necessarily
like,
being rude, and it's about crossing over and kind of being aware, because I think it's possible as a PK to just not care
right.
and to just be like, yeah, whatever. Which I think is kind of where I was a little bit when I was
Really?
14.
Yeah.
I was a little bit like, I'm not trying to mess your church up, but at the same time, dude, don't come to me with your church problems. Was kind of my attitude at the
They would
time.
come to you with their church problems
No,
at
I'm
14?
saying my dad is coming
Oh,
to me
oh, oh.
fussing about some deacon who's mad because I didn't speak to them or whatever.
Oh, right,
I kept my
right,
eyes
right,
down.
right.
And I kind of was like, I don't know if I
Got you.
really care
Right.
if this is going to hurt your ministry. Like,
Right.
get over yourself. So I think
Yeah.
that, I think the good place to be is at a point in which you're like, no, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
I can't just be rude to people.
Yeah, and I think that's just like being Jesus,
Right,
with
right.
people, like, because my thing about when I kind of like have to fight not to be, one of my closest friends is a PK too, and I'm like, try not to be mad at him that he's not really doing a great job of like, being a good witness and being a good Christian, because I'm kind of like, yo, you're not representing God well. Like,
Right.
how are you going into this situation or going into this, atmosphere with people and you're saying that you're a Christian, but you don't, like, you're not representing that well at all, because
Yeah.
it kind of moves from not just representing your parents well, or your parents' church well. It's like, yeah, like, you're representing God,
The
because
kingdom.
people know
Yeah.
who you are, and so
Right.
now it's like,
Right.
like, it kind of makes me mad that you're like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
But it comes down to kind of I think it's interesting with your generation. It's almost like the rights of the individual versus what's best for the group. Because we're so lacking in community, You know, there was a time when you just thought, oh my God, what's this going to do to my parents? Or what is it going to do to my family name?
Yeah.
Or what is this going to do to my community? Or what I do reflects the church.
Right.
I think people are just at a point right now where like, well, I'm being me.
Yep.
So
that's definitely the move
if
right
I'm
now.
me, then
Yep.
you have to get over it because this is who I am.
Yep.
And I think that there's a balance to it. I
Yeah.
think there's a fine line because I think you can become so aware of the community that you're not aware of who you are as an individual.
Right.
And I think I think it's important, but I think at the same time you can become so individualized that you have no concept whatsoever of what your actions do ultimately to society, because it does matter. You know,
True.
you can't just close. You know, you just can't just close your eyes to what's happening in your world as if, well, that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
People are being killed around you, then you need to speak up.
Right.
You know, so that you
Right.
can impact your world. Okay, anyway, this has been pretty cool. I have no idea how long we've been talking.
I know, I'm like, it just seems like maybe we were talking for a long time.
No, it seems that way, but you know what? You're Kayla. You know what I'm saying?
I try.
Queen of La Mancha. Okay?
What does that mean? You say that a lot.
Well, man
La
of La
Mancha?
Mancha, it's Don Quixote. Anyway, it's
Okay, I can. That's
okay.
good
Anyway,
maybe.
it's classical education. Okay, podcast. It's been great.
It's been cool.
Thumbs up for my daughter Kayla T.
Thumbs up.
And we're waiting for your next hit song to come out. Holding to My Hand was great, but let's go.
I know.
Let's
we gotta
go.
we gotta
Come
get
on.
the train moving again.
Get to
I
it.
don't know what's going on. We'll
Let's
figure it
go.
out.
All right. And but it's been great. All right. So see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Podcast.